An anime begins with our overpowerful protagonist Kosuke standing on top of a massive building, completely surrounded by heavily armed forces, but in a fraction of a second, he uses his godlike powers to completely annihilate squads of soldiers. In the very next moment, he mercilessly lifts massive war tanks into the sky and drops them like toys, crushing everything in his path before effortlessly destroying a swarm of attack helicopters. And once they were all defeated, he slowly walked toward one of the pilots and surrendered, though he firmly stated that he would not remove his school uniform. Hours later, inside one of the city's prisons, a group of inmates gathered excitedly to watch a fight and sent Andy into the arena. And even though the boy tried to resist being forced into combat, he had no choice. So when his opponent rushed at him, Andy delivered a single powerful strike that knocked the man unconscious, astonishing everyone who witnessed it. And one of the leaders approached Andy, reminding him that this was already his 7th victory, and expressing hope that he would continue fighting on his behalf. But Andy only grew irritated because he did not wish to keep fighting. And at that very moment, he noticed a helicopter approaching the prison, which made him curious about who was arriving. And soon, he saw the prison director Kei welcoming Kosuke to the facility known as Expert Prison. Yet Kosuke showed no interest in learning the names of ordinary people, especially those he believed would never be useful to his organization Pandora, which angered one of the officers who attempted to strike him for such disrespect toward his superiors and reminded him that his psychic powers would not function in this prison. But Kosuke calmly replied that they should test him first, and then Andy stepped in, telling the officers there was no need to be so aggressive with him. And in that instant, Kosuke became interested in Andy, approached him, and asked for his name, sensing something unusual in his gaze. And when the officers continued complaining, Kosuke decided to make them back off by lifting one of the helicopters with his power, which terrified the officials enough to activate the system that suppresses abilities to its maximum level, causing Kosuke to lose control and fail to complete what he intended. And soon, both he and Andy were dragged into the punishment chamber. Sometime later, Kosuke spoke to Andy through the wall, asking why he had come to see him earlier, and Andy answered that he simply wanted to meet the new Esper because he hated them, which made Kosuke remark that it was ironic since he had clearly seen Andy use powers as well. And Andy admitted it, but explained that this prison was a living hell for people like them because they could not use their abilities, and the only way to escape was by getting seriously injured, so they would be taken to the hospital. And after hearing this, Kosuke promised that he would help him escape, and Andy replied that if he truly managed to do so, he would even join Kosuke's organization out of gratitude, which Kosuke accepted without hesitation and said he expected him to keep that promise. The next day, Kosuke was already in the dining hall, and when it was his turn to receive food, he noticed someone adding something suspicious into his soup. So he assumed they intended to poison him and instead offered the soup to Andy as thanks for helping him the previous day, which Andy gladly accepted because it meant better food, while Kosuke observed him carefully. And later another fight began and Kosuke overheard inmates mocking Andy, saying that although exam records listed him as an Esper, they had never seen his powers because he was always ridiculed. And at that moment, Andy began to feel strange, his body heavy and weak, unable to move properly. So he was struck repeatedly and lost the duel within seconds, and Kosuke apologized to him, admitting that part of the food must have been poisoned, and now he would fulfill his promise to help him escape. Sometime later, Andy awoke and saw Kosuke standing there, who informed him he was fine because he had just administered an antidote, and Andy then noticed that all the guards were lying unconscious on the floor and asked what had happened. But Kosuke explained that what many called the hospital was actually an operating room where parts of their bodies were removed, and he told Andy he had kept his promise of freedom and now needed to deal with his next objective. And minutes later, Andy followed Kosuke while talking about how strange that place was. And when a soldier suddenly appeared, Andy knocked him out in seconds and disarmed him, which impressed Kosuke because of his skilled movements, leading him to assume Andy knew how to handle weapons. And Andy confirmed that he had once served in the Navy, and shortly after they reached a large hall marked as an experimentation room, and using the weapon they had taken, Kosuke destroyed nearby generators and equipment. And from a central cubicle, a young girl emerged calling him Master, and Kosuke promised he would free her, then used his power to knock out several guards. And Kei entered the hall understanding why Kosuke had allowed himself to be captured, since he had come for that girl. And Kei declared that they would never be separated again because now they would become part of his experiments, which enraged Andy as he realized illegal experimentation was being conducted on Espers. But Kei remained confident because beside him walked a grotesquely transfigured man, one of his greatest results from genetic experiments. And Kei claimed he had created the strongest warrior possible, so when Kosuke attempted to attack, he saw that the man possessed a shield and began fighting in the air. Yet none of Kosuke's attacks were effective, and he had to constantly evade the warrior's immense power, while Kei mocked him, saying he would never surpass his greatest creation because it carried multiple psychic genes that allowed it to predict an opponent's next move. And in that moment, Andy decided to help by grabbing the weapon and searching for the right position, finding it just as Kosuke was slammed against the chamber where the girl had been confined, and Andy fired precisely at the controller of the monster, shouting for Kosuke to take the chance to escape, but the monster attacked him immediately and activated his defense while trying to flee. Astonishingly, comforting Casca because what he witnessed felt strangely familiar, and he reassured the girl that everything would be all right. Yet when he saw the cruel treatment she had endured, his anger surged beyond control, and with a simple motion, he shattered all the glass around them. And when Kay compared that experiment to his own queen who possessed the greatest power, the insult deeply offended him, and he declared that is where the true difference would begin. And in that instant, he decides it is time to release his unlimited power. So with a calm motion, he adjusts a button on his school uniform and something shifts, and his restrained energy begins pouring out like a storm breaking its chains, leaving everyone in that room stunned. As he walks forward without haste, the ground cracking open beneath his steps, while every attack launched at him fades away as if it never existed, and with nothing more than a slight movement of his finger, he slams the monstrous experiment into the wall and bids farewell to the brothers who had been twisted into that form. And then, with a small gesture, the creature detonates violently, forcing Andy to shield himself from the flying debris, while the little girl waves toward Momotaru, standing amid the wreckage, and Casca coldly tells Khan that he will pay for everything he has done, and explosions begin ripping through the facility one after another until, with a final motion, Koski vanishes from the chaos and reappears in a safe location with Andy and the girl, watching from a distance as the entire place collapses into flames, and only then does he return to his normal state by limiting his power again, while Andy struggles to understand what he just witnessed. Minutes later, they reach the sea, where Koski shatters an illusion in front of them, revealing a camouflaged ship hidden beneath the surface, and turning toward the remaining prisoners, he announces that Pandora has granted them freedom, and they are free to leave, and at the same time, he reminds Andy that he must honor his promise to join them, which Andy accepts without hesitation, and Koski contacts Yugiri so they can head back home. Later, some of his companions question whether bringing a man like Andy aboard is truly safe, yet Andy quietly steps away and activates a transmission, introducing himself to his superior as the investigator from US who successfully infiltrated Pandora. Days pass and Andy, now presented as a new recruit, reports what happened while explaining his ability, which essentially nullifies the powers of anyone attempting to use them on him, something they confirm by attacking him, and even Yugiri failing to read his mind, leaving everyone shocked. And Koski explains that due to Andy's nature, being close to them may cause discomfort or pain, yet they must accept him because, like many espers, he never chose to be born that way. So Andy tries to adapt, learning about each member aboard the ship and asking subtle questions to gather information, though he admits to his superior that Pandora does not feel like the criminal organization he expected, and Alan reminds him sharply that he has a mission and must complete it quickly because they need the information he can access. Meanwhile, Maggie confronts Koski, saying she does not trust Andy since they know nothing about him and cannot use psychic abilities to verify his intentions, but Koski proposes bringing him along on the next mission to prove his worth, and the following day they leave the ship on a smaller boat and enter Venice, where Andy stares in awe at the canals before they enter a warehouse filled with goods bearing Pandora's mark, astonishing him because the organization openly distributes incriminating products, including illegal weapons and stolen merchandise, yet Koski orders them to contact the buyers to proceed with the deal, and after leaving the warehouse and walking some distance, Casca signals Maggie, who sprouts carbon-formed wings and returns to the warehouse to eliminate an informant spying on them, discovering more investigators searching nearby. Meanwhile, Koski meets with the group when Momoji disappears alongside Joe, confusing Andy until Koski tells him to follow, and as Andy runs uncertainly, he hears a guiding voice and reaches an alley where dizziness strikes, and his voice falters, realizing Joe caused the disorientation while Maggie and Momoji float above, immobilizing several men without anyone nearby understanding what is happening. And soon Koski arrives asking who they are, and his companions answer they belong to the Maldini family, the same group scheduled for that night's transaction, though something feels wrong. Hours later, Andy watches from a rooftop as Casca converses with Carlos, leader of the family, recalling their plan because Carlos betrayed them, and betrayal among espers means death, and Andy is expected to carry it out as a Pandora member, which unsettles him deeply, yet Joe urges him to steady himself while Maggie eliminates approaching guards, and Koski speaks calmly to Carlos, whom he has known for over 50 years since their time in the army, knowledge Andy had uncovered in records, showing Koski was born in the early 1930s and fought in the First World War. And then Maggie alerts Koski that Carlos formed an alliance with state agencies, angering him for siding with normal humans, and he orders Andy to fire, making Andy tremble as bullets rain toward Koski, and suddenly the room seems filled with copies of Koski, confusing Andy until he hears Koska's voice beside him, saying he still has much to learn. And when Koska tests his ability, he confirms that Andy's stress expands his nullification range dramatically, so he approaches and fastens a specially crafted limiter chain around him, explaining that now he can reappear inside the hall where Carlos stood. There they defeat Carlos, revealing him to be a robot, while the real one was across the street targeting them from afar, planning to kill Koski remotely. Yet Andy's expanded nullification blocked his power entirely, and Koski faces the elderly traitor, reminding him he reached equal rank only because he once died, bearing a bullet scar scar on his forehead and wearing black in memory of those lost. And when Carlos unleashes a psychic wave, Koski stops it effortlessly, removes his limiter, bids farewell to his old friend, and with a massive surge of magical energy obliterates everything before him, destroying his enemy with ease. And afterward, he returns to normal as they depart while Andy stares at the devastation across Venice. The next day, Maggie asks Yugiri to read Andy's mind to uncover his true identity, but the girl refuses because she obeys only Koska's orders. And later, they celebrate aboard the ship for eliminating another enemy, while Andy feels uneasy at their newfound kindness until Koska tells him he is officially accepted as a brother within Pandora, astonishing him as he asks whether they are criminals, and Koski replies that it is something he must discover for himself. Days later, two representatives arrive in a limousine at a grand gathering, surprised by the crowd, and Kouchi explains that all nations with powered organizations were invited, while Shui views it as a means of surveillance and control, since high-level espers have become powerful bargaining weapons, and Kouchi hushes him upon noticing Koski and Pandora members present, so they approach and ask why they are there, and Koski answers that they were invited, though in truth they invited themselves, and admits he simply wanted to observe potential future enemies before leaving. But Shui angrily grabs his collar, demanding his true intention, yet rumors and whispers force him to release Koska, who says they will meet again and waves his hand, causing the lights to go out briefly, and when they return, a message is written on the wall declaring Pandora was here, and amid the chaos, Kichi arrives with the event's security director, introducing himself as part of Japan's extrasensory investigation division and explaining they spotted Pandora members and need to know what else occurred, but the man hesitates to reveal the truth, and everything grows tense at once when a guard rushes in announcing that breaking news is already spreading across television screens, reporting that according to available information, Queen Sophia has been taken by that very organization, which shocks Kouchi as he realizes what was truly being hidden, and he promises they will assist because they have clashed with Pandora before, and he reveals he seized a USB from Koski during their earlier confrontation, insisting they must examine its contents while Koska watches from afar in silence, waiting for them to move. Minutes later, the Queen awakens, confused to find herself somewhere unfamiliar, and Koski gently explains they belong to Pandora, but assures her she is safe and has nothing to fear, adding they brought her this way because Yugiri foresaw her life in danger and asked them to save her, and the Queen slowly understands before proposing an alliance, saying they do not seem like the villains described, and together they could fight for Esper rights so they may live peacefully, yet Kosuke tells his team to return to their duties so the Queen may rest, while elsewhere Shui comments that Pandora predicted an attack on the Queen and took her first, though he still cannot grasp Kosuke's motive and needs more information. Later, Yugiri brings the Queen something to drink, and the Queen asks if they can talk since she feels lonely, so they sit together and speak quietly, while Andy asks Koski if it was truly Yugiri who suggested saving her, and Koski confirms it was her rare request born from a premonition, something unusual for the girl, and just then the Queen enters with Yugiri, saying they discussed going out to show her the country because Yugiri feels confined, astonishing Andy because such openness seems impossible, yet Yugiri assures Koski she will protect the Queen, and Koski decides to adjust his strategy since it is not working well enough. Soon, Shui and Koichi are alerted to chaos spreading through the streets, leaving them stunned as women everywhere resemble the Queen, and security explains they questioned some who know they are not her, yet happily play along. Realizing it is hypnosis cast by Koski, while Joe confirms the plan works and alerts the team to suspicious men in an alley, and within seconds Maggie and Momiji immobilize them, deliberately mentioning the Queen's hideout, so one escapes to spread the information, leading pursuers straight to Koski waiting there, where he captures them and informs Andy the Queen and Yugiri are enjoying a normal day while Andy follows because only he remains unaffected by hypnosis, and Koski extracts intelligence from captured kidnappers, learning they are a small anti-Esper group ordered online to eliminate the powerless Queen, so he waits for the other half of his plan involving Yuhi and Kichi, who access the USB and uncover government bills, national budgets, and congressional records, though the security director blocks them from seeing classified data, raising suspicion, especially since his partner is absent. Meanwhile, Andy escorts the Queen and Yugiri, though exhausted, suggesting returning to the hotel, yet Yugiri insists on visiting a special place, leading them to an abandoned orphanage the Queen instantly recognizes as one she once funded, recalling a young Esper girl who disappeared without a trace after she tried kindly approaching her, and Yugiri remembers too, revealing that was why she wanted her saved, and they embrace because the Queen was the first human not to judge her powers, and suddenly Cicely, a security official, arrives recognizing the Queen, followed by Koichi, and guards announcing Cicely orchestrated the attack just as he attempts to kill her, but Andy takes the blow to his shoulder, and Cicely accuses the Queen of misusing funds to help Espers instead of ordinary people, advancing angrily until Yugiri unleashes her power, stunning everyone nearby, and Koski appears beside her calming her before before she loses control, then shatters Cicely's weapon and agents arrest him, and the queen notices Yugiri's trust in Koski before entrusting the girl's safety to him, which he accepts, and tells Koichi they found the culprit so Pandora has no reason to remain, promising they will vanish without judgment. Days later, Koski informs Momiji and Maggie they are heading to Japan to visit someone special, puzzling the crew, while Andy reports to Alan he has yet to access the ship's navigation center, but assures he has a plan and will not fail given the investment made in him. And soon, multiple ships and helicopters sweep the port searching for Koska, who smiles as Babel Agency arrives, ordering camouflage to distract them, while Andy tries entering the control room only to find multiple doors before Joe and Yugiri intercept him. Explaining the area requires clearance he lacks, and suddenly an explosion rocks the ship as enemy infiltrations are reported and city operatives fall quickly, alarming Momiji while Joe asks Andy to assist. And in the captain's cabin, Koski watches sensors being hacked by Kichi, demanding surrender under arrest orders. Yet Koski's attention shifts to a girl flying outside and he leaves Maggie with the sensors to greet her as his queen. After a long time, though, Kaoru is irritated and counters his attack with ease, launching into a fierce aerial duel at blinding speed, evenly matched. Meanwhile, Andy reaches a room where a girl moves impossibly fast, prompting Joe to stun her with a shout, though she outruns the waves. So Andy disables his limiter, resists her sonic attacks, pins her down, and questions her high-level ability, but ropes bind him as her partner arrives, while Koski continues evading Kaoru's strikes, and the girls realize Andy's immunity to powers as he identifies them as Japan's Special Esper Squad, surprising Kaoru, and Kosuke presses her on their aggression, suspecting Koichi's revenge, and she promises answers if he catches them, while Andy learns they seek the access key to the main panel, and discover it was the same key used to limit his power, and they seize Momotaru who holds it, and Andy suggests they take him hostage, which they accept, and moments later battle erupts in the cabin. Maggie is immobilized, Andy is hurled onto Momiji, knocking her down, a flash grenade blinds them briefly, and the girls insert a chip into the navigation system, fully hacking it and redirecting the ship before escaping with their objective, while Andy frees himself calmly and walks away, and Kosuke notices the altered course as Kaoru declares she achieved her goal of buying time so they cannot escape, and Andy heads for the ship's core seeking information until Kosuke appears asking what he is doing and urging him back to the cabin, and as they discuss their loss of control, Kosuke decides they must remain as decoys while he confronts Kaoru without navigation restored, but just before teleporting, Andy touches him and both transport onto the enemy ship's warehouse, surprising Kosuke though he resolves they must attack, opening a hatch releasing captured comrades to their stations, and just as they prepare a grenade suddenly appears before them. He barely manages to throw her back, but the air doesn't even have time to calm down before the same three girls from earlier appear again, and Kosuke's voice stays steady as he tells Andy he must take responsibility for regaining control of the ship while he himself handles the fight against them. So Andy sprints toward the submarine platform where he runs straight into someone he recognizes instantly, the Babel director, Fujiko, and the moment she flashes a remote in her hand, she casually invites him closer, like she's already won. Yet when Andy steps in, she slips away several meters in a blink and hurls heavy objects at him from different angles, and he dodges by the smallest margin, forcing himself to remember why he's here and what's at stake, and using the chaos of incoming missiles as cover. He times it perfectly, so the explosions burst close enough to rattle Fujiko's footing. Then he lunges, grabs her hand, and triggers his second ability, touch-based suppression, shutting down her psychic power for a short window, and with her strength gone, he knocks her unconscious and smashes the control device so Pandora can reclaim the ship's systems. But just then, Koichi rushes in and points a gun at him to freeze him in place, and Andy reacts on pure reflex, closes the distance, and the two clash evenly, which stuns Koichi because Andy's movement carries the unmistakable rhythm of specialized techniques, and before Koichi can adjust, Andy springs away and jumps off the vessel at the exact moment Kosuke snatches him and lifts him into the air, pulling him out of danger while reminding him, half serious and half warm, that he is still the one who saved him, yet also praising him for how much he helped, while Koichi turns back to his team and admits they have only one option left, an option even the director approves now that she has regained consciousness. Meanwhile, Kosuke returns with Andy to the cabin, and Andy is handed an access key because they've seen he matters. But at the same time, on Koichi's orders, the three girls receive a powerful enhancer that floods their bodies with force, and their amplified abilities produce a massive telekinetic wave that begins dragging the ship itself, and Kosuke calmly tells everyone he will handle the Queen, then leaves again. And Andy doesn't understand what that even means until the others explain the ship's true name is Queen of Calamity, and Pandora is not simply a criminal group, but a movement with a goal, to free those oppressed by ordinary people and shape a better world, because in their vision, Kaoru is their queen. And with that belief burning behind his eyes, Kosuke releases his power and sends out a sweeping psychic wave that strips away the girls' strength mid-attack, overpowering them so easily, he flings them through the air like they weigh nothing, and the ship falls back under Pandora's control. Shields are activated at once, and everyone everyone watches in disbelief as the vessel begins using its own power to rise and fly, something no one expected, leaving Koichi frozen in stunned silence as Kosuke and his organization vanish into the sky. And Koichi feels the frustration hit hard because they failed their main objective, yet he still tells his people they fought well, admitting it is extremely difficult to defeat Kosuke, and at least they gained more information that he hopes to weaponize later. After a few days, Pandora's ship slips into a Japanese port where an ally already has everything prepared for repairs after that confrontation, and Kosuke thanks him briefly before leaving immediately to handle errands, while the others wander the city, and Andy walks behind them carrying bags and feeling the weight of it all, unable to understand the point of what they're doing because it looks like they're just buying things while he does the hauling. And Yugiri grows irritated because nobody lets her choose for herself, so she suddenly runs off, and Maggie tells Andy to go after her because he's the only one whose abilities can protect her, and though he's still annoyed, he agrees. And soon, he finds Yugiri at a small stall staring at amulets, so he buys one for her and tells her they should head back, but then he catches her gaze locked on the bright entrance of an amusement park, and even though he isn't fully convinced, he buys tickets anyway because the girl deserves at least a few hours of simple joy, and he uses his power to help her pass the Esper level meters at the entrance. And Yugiri rides everything, laughs freely, and for a moment looks like an ordinary kid, yet Andy's instincts won't quiet down, and he notices someone has been following him for a while, so he tells Yugiri to wait and goes to buy something to drink, and that's when he enters a hallway and finds Koichi already there, waiting, and Andy demands to know what they want. But Koichi says he needs to talk because he already knows Andy is an undercover investigator, and they move to a more secluded place where Koichi admits he recognized it during their fight. The martial arts technique Andy used is taught in the United States, yet Andy denies it, and then Fujiko appears, cold and confident, telling him there are certain facts even directors can't deny, so he should cooperate, and if he refuses, they will tell Kosuke everything, and Pandora will immediately doubt his credibility. But Andy refuses to accept their pressure, though he does demand to know why they are so obsessed with Pandora, and Fujiko explains it's tied to a long history reaching back to the First War, when Kosuke was betrayed by men in the army, a betrayal that poisoned him so deeply that he hunted them down and eliminated them all, even striking members connected to Babel, because he declared he would never trust ordinary people who claim they are protecting Espers. And since then, Babel has feared for the world's safety, yet at the same time they confess they also want to help Kosuke. And as they speak, Kosuke himself is elsewhere finishing his errands, having infiltrated a medical ward to complete tests, and once he gets what he needs, he disappears without leaving any trace. Meanwhile, Yugiri finishes watching a show and hears a child crying nearby, so she runs to him and gently asks what's wrong, and the boy says he's lost, and Yugiri promises she'll help find his family, then takes his hand and focuses on his memories until she hears the voices of his parents calling for him, and in a single instant she leads him straight to them, and the child throws himself into their arms, telling them it was because Yugiri closed her eyes and listened that she found them. But instead of simple gratitude, the parents' faces tighten with fear as they realize she's a high-level Esper, and they begin backing away, and rumors start spreading about what Yugiri can do, and suddenly she feels eyes everywhere, watching, judging, until Shui, assigned to keep an eye on her, fails to stop what happens next because a burst of psychic power erupts from her and transforms the entire park, flooding it with illusions of terrifying monsters and warped creatures, and the warning reaches Kichi and the others who race toward the scene, while Andy sees Yugiri pushing past her limits, so without hesitation, he throws himself forward, deactivates his limiter, wraps his arms around her, and his power shuts hers down. And in that same breath, the illusions crumble and the world snaps back to normal, though many people remain frozen in terror, and out of nowhere, Maggie arrives with two colleagues asking what happened, because they felt that psychic wave from far away, and the moment they see the stairs around them, they understand enough and insist they must leave, while Andy looks into the distance and Koichi's earlier words echo in his head like a warning that won't fade. Later, Momiji calms Yugiri and tells her they need to focus on preparations, and Andy asks why she keeps calling them a big family since he's heard it so often, and Momiji tells him it's because they truly are, explaining that she once lived in a country at war and went to sleep like any other night, but woke up to everything burning and destroyed, her family gone along with everything she loved, and even a helicopter identified her as an Esper and nearly shot her until Maggie appeared, saving her, and Kosuke came too, carrying Joe in his arms, rescuing her as well and offering her a choice: join them and gain revenge if she wanted it, or join them and pursue a world at peace. And that is why so many in Pandora come from the same scars: people forgotten, tortured, crushed by normals, people Kosuke chose to save, and they carry gratitude for him like a vow, hoping one day to reach the world their leader dreams of, and for now they decide they will throw him a party to celebrate his birthday. Soon the ship fills with celebration and Kosuke receives gifts from everyone, yet the only one that truly softens his face is the amulet Yugiri prepared, and he thanks her deeply, then turns and demands Andy return the gift, and Andy scoffs that nobody told him about a surprise birthday, teasing him that he won't forgive him next year, but that joke lands differently inside Andy because he can't stop thinking thinking that next year he likely won't be in this organization at all. And at the same time, Koski quietly remembers the exam results and knows he doesn't have much time left to live, meaning he probably won't even be here next year to celebrate. And Andy's mind drifts back to how he once joined the army only to be rejected because they saw him as useless, while the so-called normal people never accepted him either. And after struggle, he finally left the army and met Alan, who gave him a place in that unit. And when Andy speaks with his leader again, Alan says the mission is close to completion because they formed an alliance with Japanese organizations and now they only need the device that is their true target. And once they get it, everything will end. Yet Andy can't shake his fear that he won't be able to pull it off and will fail at the final step. Hours later, Maggie updates Koski on their plans, and in the middle of it, Koska suddenly feels a sharp pain in his chest, but he hides it carefully so nobody notices, then gathers everyone and announces their next mission is to steal a new device being developed by technology companies, warning it must be taken intact because what matters most is the information inside, and with that they can understand ordinary people better. And he adds that once they succeed, they will leave Japan because there is no point staying while multiple organizations hunt them. And Andy can't help becoming quiet and thoughtful at Koski's words. And when Koski asks if something is wrong, Andy pretends everything is fine, then goes off with Joe to relax. And after a while, Andy asks Joe and Mama G why their rivalry with Babel is so deadly, because he heard rumors in prison but doesn't know what's true. And Mama G tells him he's not entirely wrong, but if he wants the real origin, he must speak directly with Koski, because with that necklace and the trust it represents, Koska will likely tell him everything. But just then Yugiri appears frightened from a nightmare and asks someone to read her to sleep, and her eyes fall on Andy, and he agrees to accompany her, and Mama G smiles softly because that boy has truly become one of them. And later, Andy finishes reading. Momotaru asks him to take him to the library, and Andy does, using the moment to search for anything he can, and he finds an old photo of someone he believes is Koski from the very beginning of everything. But then footsteps approach, and Andy immediately hides as his breath tightens, and the moment turns sharp again. He steps inside that quiet room and moves straight to an old desk, lifting a dusty newspaper like he's touching history itself. And as the paper catches the light, a figure suddenly forms in front of it, staring around in confusion as if waking up in a place between worlds. And the figure looks at the blood-stained diary nearby and assumes his spirit must be trapped here, stuck as a bodiless presence. Yet Kosuke doesn't flinch and simply tells him he has something to ask, handing over a document. And Utsumi takes it and uses his ability to instantly grasp the message hidden inside. Because this ship is powered by the brain of Number 8, a man who died in the war whose telepathy and prediction are now being forced to run countless functions of the vessel, and Kosuke confirms that's exactly why they haven't been captured. But then his voice drops slightly and he asks Utsumi for a favor. If anything happens, he wants him to look after Ego. Yet he won't explain why he's saying this, and still he swears, with that old scar carrying the weight of his promise, that he will wipe out the very root of the normal people across the planet. And right then, Utsumi senses a presence and lashes out, but there's no one there, only the necklace Koska once gave Andy. And far away, Andy walks off and suddenly notices his necklace is missing, assuming he must have left it somewhere without realizing what it just brushed against. The next day, Andy watches everyone laughing and enjoying themselves, and Yugiri comes up to him warmly, thanking him for staying with her the previous night. But before Andy can even answer, Koski abruptly grabs him and hurls him into the pool like it's nothing, then tosses the necklace at him with a sharp reminder that he must keep it on, and Andy sputters out an apology, saying he honestly doesn't know where he dropped it, while Koska just stares for a moment, like he's measuring something inside Andy, something returning to the surface. And Andy finally asks the question that's been choking him, whether it's true Koski wants to build a society for espers and erase the normal people entirely. And Koska turns his back slightly and answers without softness that yes, that is true, then asks Andy which side he would stand on when that day comes. And when he sees Andy hesitate, he warns him to choose soon, so he doesn't make a fatal mistake in the next mission. That night, Andy lays everything out, and his mind keeps circling the decision he has to make. So after turning it over again and again, he calls his superior and says that tomorrow he will obtain the special device Number 8, telling them to be ready for his signal. And he adds he will also deliver information about Pandora's members and their location, but he must convince Babel not to send the 3 special girls, because if they appear, they could ruin the plan. And Alan agrees. And hours later, Koichi discusses it with his teammate, uneasy about the American's choice, but still convinced he will crush his rivals and finally defeat Pandora, which is why he informs Kaoru she will not be going on that mission. That same night, Kosuke launches the operation with his companions, and minutes later they successfully seize the caravan and surround it, but they freeze when they realize the driver is Yoichi, and helicopters are already in the sky, fitted with radar designed to jam abilities. Yet Kosuke remains calm because he expected Babel would try to strike his ship, and Koichi is shaken that he predicted it so cleanly, but Kosuke only orders Maggie and the others to handle the immediate threat while he goes to protect the ship, and the instant he moves, Kaoru blocks his path, refusing to let him pass because she saw a vision of that ship sinking with Pandora members trapped inside, and she claims they're trying to save them, but Kosuke doesn't believe her for a second. And at that exact moment, moment, his illness hits him hard, twisting his chest with a sickening wave, yet he still deactivates his limiter, overwhelms Kaoru with brutal ease, and slams her into a wall until she loses consciousness, then quickly places her inside a building so she can rest, re-engages his limit, and feels that pain surge again, and under his breath he asks for just a little more time before the end arrives. Meanwhile, Andy reaches the ship through a portal and runs for the core, where Yugiri is waiting because she believed Koski would return, and Andy promises her he'll come back from the mission safely, telling her to rest. Then he enters the core, contacts his superior, and reports he is near the device so reinforcements must be sent. But he warns them the ship contains only children and staff unfit for combat, so weapons won't be necessary, and Alan promises they will respect human rights. And as the transmission ends, a voice speaks from behind, Koska, saying that is Andy's answer to what he asked the day before, and Andy freezes in shock. But Koski calmly says he knew everything from the very beginning because Andy's fighting style and his shooting were clearly American trained, and even Andy's eyes remind him of someone from his past. Yet he won't tell the whole story because Andy is going to die on this ship just like Koski once did long ago. And that line drags Koski into a memory from many years earlier, back when he was still a child returning to Japan alongside Fujiko's father, arriving just in time to greet them. And Fujiko herself left Koski stunned with her unexpected kindness as she introduced herself warmly. But even while smiling, she used her powers to strike her own father, demanding to know why he had left her alone for so long. And the sight shook Koska because she also possessed psychic power, and he secretly hoped he could finally be close to someone like him. Days later, Koski writes a letter to his father, who had already passed away, confessing he followed his advice and now lived at the Don Haku family home. Yet he couldn't stop hearing that same command in his mind: stop using your powers, act normal. And right then, Fujiko snatches the letter to read it, and Koski, irritated, uses his power to pull it back, shocking her because she didn't expect anyone could slip past her shield, and she starts pestering him playfully, declaring that now he is her younger brother. And then her father arrives with two soldiers, one of them a man she recognizes, Captain Agi, who approaches and introduces himself as an Imperial Navy captain, admitting he came to discuss a joint project with Fujiko's father because they want Koska's powers to be used for the world and for him to be recognized as a hero. And the first step, they insist, is to join the military and use their abilities for the nation, joining a new organization they plan to create called Extrasensory Special Forces. And Fujiko's father confirms it would be a specialized unit filled with people like Koski whose talents could help the country. But Fujiko snaps back that she would never accept them using his powers, especially not in the army, because it would only bring harm to other countries, and she believes that's why Koski wouldn't join either. Yet Agi insists they do not intend to use them as ordinary soldiers, and their duties would be different. And he adds that Fujiko being a woman doesn't matter at all because she will be treated the same and could earn a strong position. But Fujiko grabs Koski and pulls him away, telling him he shouldn't listen to what those men say. And Utsumi, after picking up the letter from the floor, absorbs all its meaning before returning it to Koski as Koski leaves. And Utsumi doubts Koski will accept Fujiko's wish because the letter shows Koski intends to follow his father's teaching, hide his powers, and pretend to be normal. Yet Agi tells them they noticed that boy precisely because the father documented his progress in such detail, so he is confident Koski will join because boys like him were born to use their gifts, and right now there is only one place where they can truly do that. And with that, this anime comes to the ends. So friends, if you enjoy this anime and want next episodes, so don't forget to like the video and subscribe the channel now.